started. Today I'm happy to announce that we have a real treat for you. Banedanmark, or what you would call Danish Rail, presenting their quest to take control of the BIM processes that they are doing today. First of all, we have a little bit of practicalities, and that would be that this session will be recorded. Link will be sent to all the sign-ups, also the non-attendees, and feel free to share with colleagues if you feel that you saw something interesting today that you would like to convey to your colleagues or partners in this world. Questions can be posed in Q&A, but we will not verbally interrupt Joakim as he is presenting. So I might text an answer that I will be able to answer, or otherwise we will collect the questions for later on after the session, where we will have a Q&A session. And of course, as always, feel free to contact us for any follow-up questions that you might have to this sessions or other. So a little bit about me. I'm with the host today. We'll get back to presenting Joakim when he starts his presentation. Martin Birk. I've been doing BIM software for many years, more than I care to mention. It says down there 24, it's actually 26, but never mind. I was responsible for introducing both Revit and Tekla to the Danish markets. And during those years, it became quite clear that BIM coordination was something that was done to some degree, but not to the full degree that we actually wanted. It was so big a topic that I have this slide from a presentation I did at a conference many years ago, where I am explaining that the thing that we need in BIM today is a centralized synchronization folder, as I called it at the time. Revizto is kind of the answer to all those prayers, and I will get into that during my introduction here. First of all, single source of truth. That's a sentence that's been, or a term that's been thrown around many times, but this is actually what Revizto is offering. A one-place stop where you have everything you need for your BIM coordination needs. You can call it a BIM database, you can call it a synchronization folder, it doesn't matter. What it is that you now have all your models in one place, all synchronization, all communication issues and what have you in one place, which replaces a lot of cluttered workflows that we otherwise seem to have today. So also a thing that we see with models is that they tend to get larger and larger. And that's not just because we have larger projects, it's also because that we are getting deeper into the level of detail. We have reinforcement, that's a really good example. We have scannings to compare with existing structures and what have you. Point clouds is becoming a bigger day of our daily lives when we are doing BIM in general. So performance is key to success, but that's not all. There is much more than that. I'll get back to that, but I just want to quickly tell you about our recently released phone app. It was released here last year. And when you see these enormous models being rotated in Revizto on a PC, you see exactly the same on your phone. I'm not exactly sure how the developers managed to do that, but it's really impressive and definitely something that I would urge you to look into. So what is also important, I was talking about performance earlier, but something that has also held us back are these file compatibilities, these exchange files and what have you. Today, it more or less needs to be IFC compatible for you to reach where you want to be. And that's not always the case when we are talking civil, we are talking mechanical, we're talking plans and what have you. It's just not something that you can convert into IFC, and then what do? Sometimes there's nothing to do, something you can rely on some heavy exchange format, but it doesn't really get you to where you want to be. Revizto has the answer to that by linking directly to the plugins that you see here. And that is just a seamless plugin. It talks directly to the authoring tool, no file conversion needed. And that is really a game changer again for BIM coordination. When we are talking about rectangular office spaces, we don't have a lot of the issues that I named before. But when we're getting a little bit beyond that, and we're talking infrastructure, as we're talking today, offshore, especially plants, then you get into those issues. And in my world before Revizto, there was just no reasonable way of doing that. I was implied in many of these kind of projects when I was with Tekla, and it was just impossible to do. It was a real hassle, and a lot of the things that should have been sorted out in the BIM process ended up being sorted out on site, which is of course unacceptable and not in the spirit of BIM in general. The workflow I was talking about earlier with the scattered workflow, I think you are familiar with emails being sent around. We have Excel sheets and Word documents. That's also a thing of the past. We have everything what you need in Revizto at hand, and not just during the process, but also after. It's an invaluable source of information for your project. We sometimes refer to it as the Google of your BIM project, and the value of just being able to punch in your search criteria and finding whatever you need from whatever time. It's just, again, a big game changer. We have this slide from one of our customers in UK, who has listed this simply and saying, okay, that's just so many things that we don't need to do. We are not saying that you should stop using Word or Excel or email for that matter, but what we are saying is that you don't have to have them as a scattered part of a scattered workflow. Now you have this one BIM database that you can always rely on. So I'll soon let Joakim have the word, but what I would like for you to focus on today, or the takeaways of today, is of course the power of Revizto. I can't underline this enough. We are taking over projects now that people have split into several models and still can't handle it, and we are handling it with ease in just the one model, and it is because it's based on gaming technology. A big step in the right direction, no doubt about that. The ease of Revizto, I don't like the word intuitive, because that means that I can look at something and then I intuitively know how that works. That's almost never the case, but it is extremely simple to learn and to use. And when you are into it, it gets to be intuitive. Okay, if that works like that, then that works like that. And we see a lot of non-BIM or non-3D people jumping onto Revizto after having sworn that they would never touch any kind of 3D system. They're now asking to have Revizto because it's just very easy to use, and there's a nice segue from 2D to 3D and then into the issue handling. And yes, summarize the value of Revizto. I think you're all familiar with the challenges that you see on a daily basis with the questions that I'm talking about. Having these issues out of the way is just something that makes life much easier. And dare we say it, maybe also a little bit fun to work with. So with no further ado, I will now leave the word to Joakim Lockert. And Joakim, I will also let you present yourself.
Thank you, Martin. Well, first to everyone, thanks for joining, and of course to the Revizto team for arranging, promoting and supporting the session. I appreciate it, and I'll get right on with sharing my screen here. I've been told that there could be a slight lag in the changing of slides, so I'll go slowly and just dig in. To begin with, a bit of a personal intro. I'll try to keep this brief. I'm Joakim Lockert. I work at Banedanmark, which is the Danish National Railway Agency under the Ministry of Transport. And I don't have the same impressive tenure as you, Martin, for 24 years. But I've been working with BIM since 2009, and I currently work with BIM management and internal development projects at Banedanmark. Now I'm doing this webinar to support others in the industry, working with assessing their needs, procuring softwares, analyzing their BIM efforts and processes, and so on. And at heart, I'm an engineer, and I spent about a decade on projects and building sites prior to working in public administration and procurement in the infrastructure client role. So my job is fairly diverse in the tasks. I work in strategy, some contracts, information management in a broad sense, standards implementation, and some sustainability efforts. So here's the agenda for today. As you can see, we're going to talk about the organization, our needs, selection criteria for softwares a little bit, and a bit about our implementation. And then finally, an evaluation, which I thought, given that this is a webinar, it would be nice to do maybe as part of the questions and answers part of the session today, time permitting. So we're Banedanmark, the National Danish Railway Agency, and we're responsible for the Danish railway. It's about 3,100 kilometers of tracks and almost 200 million passengers and 8 million tons of freight annually on our network. And we have a staff of almost 3,000 with offices headquartered in Copenhagen, where I work. I'm sitting in one of the boxes there on the left, talking to you. So coming live from Copenhagen, I think we should start with our most important challenges on the journey towards an attractive and sustainable railway. We do recognize that in some places we have an outdated and worn infrastructure. There are punctuality issues. As always, railway projects are often delayed and sometimes exceed budgets. And this one point about exercising public authority, in my opinion, is both about reaching full compliance in all aspects of our project delivery, of course, but also about servicing public interests and being informative and open in everything we do. So this strategy, these ambitions, providing, I think, an important part of sustainable public mobility with a fully electrified railway or sections that are fully electrified so far, faster service, reduced congestion, as well as a trackside nature preservation. It all requires cultural changes to change a large organization, as you may well know. But the idea is that we're changing it together. We're going from a relatively high degree of handling errors ad hoc to a culture of learning. We're going from a silo mentality to clear visualizations of the complexity and mutually dependent deliverables. We're going from being a proper public administration, sure, with some flaws, to being compliant with regulations in all circumstances. And again, punctuality can always be reached to a higher degree of compliance, and environmental initiatives are being centralized as well. But moving forward with this presentation, I'd like to hang on to this, to be able to visualize the complexity and mutually dependent deliverables in every situation conducive to cooperation. I think that's a pretty succinct way of putting it, because understanding the complexity and mutual interdependencies to be able to visualize big projects, I think, is where coordination, collaboration, and integration softwares come into play. And we can see that our ambitions require easy to access and updated project data. So this is an ongoing big project. It's being designed as we speak by some of our suppliers. This is all Revizto screenshots, so we have something reminiscent of a satellite photo with the entire project, bridges and electrification and track alignment. And moving in, you see here some clearance profiles. And finally, Aarhus, which is situated in the second largest city of Denmark. And here is just an example of the visualizations that we are working with. You know, the platforms, but also the surrounding urban context, as well as the nature, with correct Z values in terms of heights and designs that can actually be constructed. And this is the objective altogether, because there's a background for adopting new design collaboration routines. And as an introduction to that, building new lines and renewing and maintaining the railway are all essential parts of our core business. And it does place a high demand to coordination and cooperation internally within our organization. So we recognize that data should be recorded and assessed and controlled uniformly, teams working in the same ways to ensure that the management itself is improved and is more transparent. And this is sort of a life cycle approach from ideas to projects being created and executed and delivered and maintained. So this necessitates that we, as a client, have taken it upon us to produce and manage early stage designs ourselves. And this is a fairly new ambition. It's been 2 years in the making, but we do our work primarily in the scoping phase to assume the responsibility for the quality and the exactitude of the early design, but also to retain some of the valuable learnings from our decision-making process, which historically has been something we procured through consultancy contracts also in early stages. Not to say in any way that we're not going to be working with our valuable consultancy partners. Of course we are, but the ambition is to insource more of the early stage design. And so far we're working in the disciplines of bridges and structures, geotechnics and drainage, tracks, of course, and ICT and BIM. And the ambition is part of the approach called the project factory, of which our project model is also a key element. And the principles of that is to work in serial planning, so decisions are made in the right order. You try to bring consequences of having the wrong order brought to light, having precisely defined deliverables to minimize the risk of misunderstandings, short and precise handovers, and a clear goal management and division of responsibilities. Through all this, we need quality assurance and a focus on continuous improvement. And this is where we begin to recognize our needs of collaboration and integration softwares. So we've given our project model some thought, and we're moving from doing 2 separate early stage design phases and having design and planning separately to doing a scoping phase in which important decisions are made, and then a detailed design and planning phase all the way out to our tender for execution. And this may seem a little bit banal in our industry, but I'm going to reference Toyota, of course, because they've succeeded with assembling 30,000 parts of an automobile to the correct quality, time, and price. And how they went about that was there was a lot of standards and training. There was this improvement culture, which was continuous. And they had a production setup of discipline packages. So the frame and the body would be worked upon. This is all stylized an example, but then a dashboard integrating into a panel, assembling the engine, seats, doors, and all other components that went into as a series of interdependent tasks. And so this is how we approach succeeding in achieving the projects at the correct quality, time, and price, doing essentially the same things, or being inspired by it, I should say. And I think the stylized diagram shows the principle well. You've got the various disciplines delivering packages in up to 3 iterations, whereby the plan and our tenders, as well as our communication to the public, is gradually refined to a point where full constructability, but also the basis for precise bidding is reached. That's the objective through the serial and interdependent and discipline-based production. And it needs to be constructible. The people working on our projects, sometimes do so under fairly harsh conditions, and also have to be able to document and register their progress in a reliable way. And then, this it's pivotal in our work, of course, because it all has to be documented in the National Archive and so on. So we do need the continuous stream of information, and looking at that as asset lifecycle data, there are areas to improve, no doubt. But we have an object-based data structure that we employ for asset management, and we're using parts of that to also tender our projects and to work with surveying and strategic planning, as well as estimated budgets, as we look at the existing infrastructure and plan renewal projects or brand new projects, greenfield. But where does a design coordination tool or integration and collaboration tool really play a part? We're going to be using a lot of surveying data from our existing infrastructure. We're going to be using it for detailed planning, and we are already. Data enrichment and quality assurance, no doubt. Tender to design. We're also going to be using it there to some degree, but then again, it really comes into play in the next phase with quality assurance in our procurement, construction, and renewal process before operation and maintenance in our tender to build. So this is a picture courtesy of my esteemed colleague, Farzad Agnoni, in the signaling program. And I think it shows this well. We have a point cloud of existing conditions. We have some new track elements. We have catenary structure, so a full view of our physical place in reality. And yeah, this requires competences. It requires people. And that's me on the left there looking happy. It's an unfortunate photo of me, but we have a BIM and digital innovation business unit, and we specialize in BIM, of course, geodata and surveying, virtual environments, including visualizations and rendering process, and of course, designing construction processes for our ICT managers, and also developing novel approaches, at least on the client side, to our own use of data and information technology. And so our individual team members are deployed to several projects, and the head of the section is Martin there with the full beard and a big smile. So I think this is probably kind of the most unsanctioned slide I'll show today. This is my list, but to enforce a new method, some key things have to be in place. We have to agree on the BIM maturity of the entire organization, at least within construction division, where I'm at, as well as the maturity and needs of each business unit and project. We must map the value chain with relevant BIM efforts or BIM undertakings in the flow. Our cooperation agreement should function based on data requirements, and we have to identify the right softwares for the tasks. Of course, we need reliable 3D models and functional integrations between different disciplines and systems. And lastly, but definitely not least, a use of open formats and data from different sources put together. And this is essentially, in my opinion, what we need to achieve on a fully habitual daily project basis is disciplines coming together, representing their view of the infrastructure, what needs to be done. And again, this is on the signaling program that have really supported the implementation of Revizto well in their processes. And this is where it's at. This is where collaboration happens. And as simple as this seems, these are the conversations that are very hard to capture in the modeling space, and with the issues and all the tracking of meetings and comments and markups and so on. I think we have a good solution for being able to capture the vast knowledge of our colleagues in meetings. Of course, there's also a degree of standards compliance we have some demands to information security. Where are the servers located? What kind of processing goes on there, and everything to do with information security is very high priority. We are a government body, so it can't be any other way. But then on a less legal level, more in my professional jurisdiction, is ISO 19650 for information management, which we are in the process of implementing slowly but surely. I can definitely say it's a long journey. But when we look at the collaborative production of information as it's specified in ISO 19650, this is just a humble sketch, but we want to see where we can apply which systems to be able to carry out the processes and be compliant with the standards that we want to enforce upon our own processes, and maybe in time the whole value chain. So our approach to the interface coordination, for example, at 14-day intervals in a design phase of a specific project, we're calling the BIM loop. And the BIM loop integrates class detection and discipline interface coordination, what you saw in the meeting there, the picture of it. It fits with our project model for discipline deliveries and ongoing interdisciplinary control. It supports our handover of data packages in a routine way, and the process can be adapted to all of our projects. So this is a very simple visualization. In the exemplary 14 days, we say step 1 is a design period for a specific deliverable in some kind of container. A discipline control is performed, and all of these processes, of course, are specified, but there won't be time to go through them today. But then a model checklist control is carried out also on the supply side, the appointed consultant. And then as we move on to the client side of the loop, some BIM discipline control and interface coordination meetings take place, and thusly it loops for a number of times until we have achieved full constructability. We may not achieve, as my boss states it, a clash-free project, but we can achieve a conflict-free project. And I thought that was a pretty poignant statement. I like that. Can we use it to achieve a conflict-free project? I think it plays a part. So how do we go about then selecting the right tool? We spent a lot of time looking at software requirements and what the most critical uses were. And it was an arduous task because our self-performed design work department were newly started and were trying to establish themselves and the expectations to them and from them with regard to the rest of the organization, and their own deliverables was being sort of slowly cemented. And therefore, it took some time to define our needs, to look at different softwares, to compare the functionality and the operability of different solutions is in itself a kind of surveying and research task. But we made a list of the most important functional and operational requirements, and this is in no particular order, but the data security and how it's encrypted is pivotal. We wanted it to be browser-based, at least in part, and to be able to control access. Of course, some system requirements that work with and take full advantage of the hardware that we have, a documented ease of use, model and drawing viewing, open to many or any formats, and a lot of other requirements that we were working with. I think the most important ones for me is to be able to set up some predefined workflows and approval flows, to be able to import user templates across many projects, to have a powerful viewer, which Revizto certainly does, to be able to visualize projects well, and of course being able to both attribute and extract attributes, either in parts or all of projects that are modeled. So with regard to our implementation, we know that our established procedures have been changing in recent years as a result of digitalization, but we're now seeing that we are working with digitalization as a well-established process rather than a process of change. Of course, there's still change and implementation and new things coming on the market. We fully recognize that, but it has to stand upon the basic level that we have built up as an organization. So the imperative is that we keep our focus on the value and a moderate approach. I don't think it has to be everything at once with regard to functionality, but we see that our digital processes have fully landed, and we do have to collaborate in new ways. And I think also, in a broad sense, BIM professionals need project and engineering expertise to create stability, maturity, reliability within our new methods of ensuring a constructible tender material and doing interdisciplinary coordination. But we have the system and the BIM loop method currently deployed, and the software is running fully on 38 different projects within a range of different tender or procurement models, or different consultancy contract types, but also varying levels of BIM maturity, and I should say, for lack of a better word, BIM confidence in projects. So again, courtesy of Facade Agnoni and the signaling program, some examples of the kind of elements that we are displaying and checking within the environment. We're seeing essentially what goes into the railway, also the slopes of soil, and again the catenary hangers and the tracks themselves, the ballast. And I think these examples really speak for themselves. And when you look at infrastructure modeling in general, it's not nearly as detailed as in construction, and it's not nearly as low tolerances, at least for a large part of it. But the complexity arises with all the interfaces, and so linear projects, of course, are different. I'm sure you all know that, the people who are attending. It's planned differently, it's designed differently from building construction, and it's also modeled, I think, because of the level of information need is different. It's also modeled differently. So I'm going to say thanks. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much, Joakim. That was truly awesome. As an old BIM nerd, I'm clapping my hands here, because what I've been saying for many, many years is that what we need in construction is this one strong player to take control of the whole construction in its entity, from planning to the actual construction. I'm curious, I know that this is quite early stage for you. It's not that long that you had to implement these tools, but are you starting to get the sense in Banedanmark that you already have more control of what's being done for you at this point?
Yes. Short answer, yes. Definitely with regard to deliverables. There's some added complexity with introducing a new meeting type, and that doesn't really reflect, I think, on the chosen software necessarily, but again, the complexity arises in terms of interfaces between disciplines, and I think Revizto supports that well. So it's still early days. We're happy about the system. It supports our undertaking well at this point. So short answer, yes. We are beginning to see some change brought about by using the system.
absolutely the way for the future, as I see it, that we get this centralized control that I've been asking for so many years, and definitely something that should be conveyed to other parties as well. And I'm just happy to be a little part of that progression. We have for so long we have said that we cannot compare ourselves with the manufacturing, because they're spitting out the same thing 1,000 times in the same building and the same workflows, and that is correct. But we have also been missing some of the key elements in manufacturing, which is a centralized control of everything. So very, very nice to see an example of that. And I want to thank you very much for coming today. I don't have a question in the chat.
But I'd like to just answer yours with a comment, or your comment with a comment. And I appreciate your sentiment with control. I think it's in large part, yes, there's an ability and a potential to control, but the process is being undertaken for the sake of collaboration first and foremost. And while control is an important part, I think it's equally important that we all have some control over our own contributions to projects. And so, yes, we're a client, we procure services, sure, and we do need to control stuff, but I'd like to call it centralized support rather than control. I hope that makes sense.
Absolutely, very much so. Are there any questions from the audience to Joakim? I don't hear or see any, but let me just close off with something that we are also talking a lot about, especially here in Scandinavia, as sustainability. And there's a lot of talk about how much CO2 we are spending on producing concrete and so on. But we have also seen studies for many, many years that show that up to 30% of what we are constructing is wasted today. And that is to some degree because of bad coordination. So what I'm saying is that the first way to be in a greener world is to get those ducks in a row. So it's not just about being more effective, it's also about being greener and showing the way for the future. So again, thank you very much, Joakim. And
thank you
all for attending. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.